And now, an ad from Dad.
All right, save money on car insurance when you bundle home and auto with Progressive. Can I take these off? All right. What is this? This looks good. Wow, that's well made. Where did you get this? I'm talking to you with the hair. Yeah, where did you get this? It's good stuff. That's solid. That's not veneer, that's solid stuff.
Progressive can't save you from becoming your parents, but we can save you money when you bundle home and auto. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Discounts not available in all states or situations.
Tonight. Alright! We're gonna have a TV party, alright! Tonight! We've got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews. Everybody's gonna hang out here tonight! Alright! We'll pass out on the couch, alright! Tonight! We've got nothing better to do and watch TV and have a couple of brews. Don't talk about anything else. We don't want to know. We're dedicated to our favorite shows.
And tonight, our favorite show is The Punisher, Season 2, brought to you by the good people at Netflix, ABC Studios, and Marvel. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And joining me tonight are 100 less people than were on the last Punisher podcast. So hopefully we'll get this done in an hour instead of 9 hours like last time. First on the panel, they call him street-level starch, but I know him as the man who begs the question, why be a honky when you can be funky? Ladies and gentlemen, it's Progressive Jesse Starcher. How do you do, sir?
Oh, my goodness. I am ready to talk some Punisher tonight. Punisher Season 1 TV Party Tonight, better known as Lessons We've Learned in Podcasting. Because I think we have made quite a few efforts to reduce our discussion time since that podcast. Albeit, don't get it wrong, Season 1's discussion was a lot of fun. But hey, I'm ready. I'm ready to talk some Bernthal Punisher tonight. Netflix getting it right again, in my opinion.
All right, and speaking of honkies, here's a soulless robot from Utah. Ladies and gentlemen, my co-host with the most from Damn You Hollywood. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Winfree. How do you do, sir?
You know, you misused that bit of language there. Begging the question is not a different way to say asking the question. Begging the question means that the conclusion of your question assumes the answer at the beginning of it.
Your
use of language is flawed.
I also fucked up Dearth, if I remember correctly. So thank you for taking the time out of my own podcast to correct me and make me look like a dumbass. I appreciate you.
Dude, I'm a robot. I'm Linguo, the grammar robot.
Terrific. All right. Let's get into it. The people came here to listen to us talk about the Punisher, so let's do so. We all agree pretty much Punisher Season 1 was one of the best of the Marvel TV shows. Even across platforms, it was, when you throw in there Cloak and Dagger and The Runaways and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it's still...
You're just making it look better by comparison.
I knew you were going to say that. Punisher stands far and away one of the best ones. So we had a lot of high hopes for Season 2 when it was announced that they were going to do another one. So let's just go around the table real quick. What were your expectations, Winfree, for Season 2? What did you want to see happen?
What did I want to see happen? I wasn't sure exactly. I wanted more violence, because I'm a fan of the violence. I make no apologies for that. I really wanted to see, I think if you wanted, the first episode actually really kind of encapsulated what I think I wanted. I didn't know this at the time, mind you, but I wanted to see Frank dealing with some of his stuff. Because there was such a big deal made in the first season about getting him to a point where he's now willing to acknowledge some of his problem issues and try to move forward with them. I wanted to see him dealing with that. And I wanted to see a bit of the lost soul. And we got some of that, and then we got pulled back in by the black hole of suck that is Madani. with her gravitational force exponentially magnified by a somehow worse character, who we'll get to in more depth in a minute. But I wanted the brutality amped. Thankfully, I did get that. I wanted to watch Bernthal act his way through an arc for Frank again, because he did such a great job with it in the first season. I mean, genuinely, watching him act is one of the big draws for season 1 for me, because he does Frank Castle so much justice as a character. I wanted more of that. And then they dropped trailers that showed, hey, we're bringing back Billy Russo, and I went, I don't know how I feel about that, not because I dislike the actor or the character. Ben Barnes is a highlight of the second season. But I don't know, man. That gave me a little bit of pause, but I was hyped to the gills. I stayed up all night and watched this thing. Pretty much. It was, again, kind of a letdown in some respects that we will get to again, but
let me go.
I wanted like the Roadhouse stuff in the beginning. That's kind of what I wanted. I wanted more of a new agey Western vibe to this, and sadly, I was very much let down in that respect.
We're going to New York.
Again.
Jesse, slightly different question, but some of the same. You are, as I called you at the beginning, street level starch. You've been reading a lot of Punisher, and other than Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe, what Punisher arc would you have liked to have seen them inspire season 2? What were you, if you could have been the showrunner for season 2?
Wait, I can answer this. I can answer this for Jesse. He wants Frankencastle.
We've had this discussion, as a matter of fact, just recently on the Source Material podcast. Frankencastle, oh boy, I don't know about all that. I'll tell you one of the...
Come on, they could have used it to spin off into... No, sorry, different property, but Sony needs a hook for Morbius the Living Vampire, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Something spooky and scary. It could have done wonders for that, maybe. I think that one of my favorite interactions with Frank and any other villain in the Marvel universe would have been with the Kingpin. And now, we know that I haven't had a chance to watch Daredevil Season 3. So I'm sure that there's a lot that happens in that arc. So I don't...
I'll spoil it for you.
Well, I'd rather you not. If you could resist for just a few minutes. I have your guys' show still on my Overcast right now, to where once I watch it, I will actually check it out. But I am excited at some point to check that out. So anyway, I wanted to see Punisher against the Kingpin. That's what I would have loved to have seen. But
yeah, they do. Without spoiling too much, they do kind of close the door on Kingpin in a lot of respects.
And I had a feeling that that's probably what would have happened, just because, hey, he's done fantastic work. I would have been happy to see D'Onofrio's Kingpin more, because his Kingpin is so dark. D'Onofrio's Wilson Fisk is one of the highlights of all of these shows. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And I think you run the risk of kind of oversaturating. Even though we would like more, people will probably be like, "Oh, the Kingpin again." So, okay, but regardless, I always wanted to see. I wanted to see Punisher versus the Kingpin in some shape on our TV screens, and just we didn't exactly get that. We get more Jigsaw, which he's probably up there at top 3, top 5 for sure, Punisher villains, but I don't know. There you go, Mark.
Terrific. Here's what I was hoping. I mean, with the end of the first season, Frank says, for the first time in my life, I have no more wars to fight. And
I'm scared.
And I'm scared, and so that leaves it open to exactly how season 2 starts, which is he is trying to move on with his life. He is trying to live the life of Frank Castle, or Pete as his alter ego, and leave the Punisher behind. And he's dragged back into a situation due to
I don't know about dragged, because he seemed pretty much a willing participant there.
Well, I mean,
once there was an option to get involved.
Well, consider this: there's a degree of chivalry about Frank Castle,
Yes,
and he talks about that in the show, where he's like, if you were a guy, I probably wouldn't have gotten involved. But
I love that. Like, he actually says, "Call me old-fashioned," but if you'd have been a guy I jumped you, I probably wouldn't have done anything.
Well, that's where I'm getting to with this. So I wanted to see. I got what I wanted, but once I got it, I didn't want it anymore. I wanted to see like kind of Goodfellas type thing. I tried to get out, but they pulled me back in, kind of a thing. Here's the problem.
That's actually from Godfather Part 3.
I'm actually, you know what I meant to say, Godfather, and out came Goodfellas. Leave me alone, I'm sick.
In fairness, it's Godfather Part 3, so we all prefer Goodfellas.
Thanks. Good save. Here's the problem, and we'll start the discussion with season 2. The structure of season 2 is essentially that. It's every time I try to get out, they pull me back in. It's him wrestling with this identity of the Punisher and whether or not to fully embrace it. And by the end of season 2, he realizes that he is the punishing angel of death, and that's all he can be, and that's all he wants to be. And that's fine. So you have a really strong beginning with Roadhouse Blues, and you have a really strong ending with The Whirlwind. It's the middle that there's a lot of problems with. I'm going to throw some ideas out there, and then I'll let you guys respond. You guys are very good at just sort of picking up the ball and running with it, so I don't have to necessarily lead you with questions. But my biggest problem with season 2 is that the two main story arcs, the A arc and the B arc,
oil and freaking water.
I was going
to
say they don't mix well, but yeah, they don't mix at all. You have the long hard road out of hell for Billy Russo. That's storyline A, and then you have a girl, her pictures, and the priest, the pilgrim rather.
You have our excuse to cram down social justice concepts.
In storyline B, and they do a piss poor job of pacing both stories. They do, as far as sharing equal time. They do a piss poor job of intertwining them to the point where it was jarring, and oftentimes they'd stay so long in one arc that you'd forget the other arc was even still a thing. This season is unfocused. It meanders all over the road. And outside of some really fun, aggressive, brutal action scenes, I wasn't particularly hooked by anything that I was watching in the narrative. Like, the story they're telling wasn't tremendously interesting at all. And as Robert will go on a 90-minute rant telling us in just a few minutes, most of the characters make really, really stupid decisions.
You weren't involved in the Billy Russo, Krista Dumont angle.
Stop it. Do not mention... No. You don't get to bring up her name.
Dr. Krista Dumont.
No. She is bargain basement Harley Quinn, and we will refer to her as such.
Can I refer to her as Supergirl's sister's lesbian girlfriend? Because she was that as well. I want you to know that. Floriana.
Hold on. Is that an actress thing or is that a character thing?
Floriana Lima played the girlfriend for a season or two of Supergirl's sister. Is she as useless in that show as she is in this one?
He beat me to it. I was going to ask the exact same question.
All right.
Okay. Well, all right. Let me start out then, if you don't mind.
Ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I love the first 3 episodes of this season.
Well, hang on. Any problem with what I said, by the way, with my issues with this season? Okay.
I agree with you completely. That is my biggest gripe with this entire season. it's not that there are two different storylines running. It's that they don't blend. They just exist roughly on roughly parallel tracks. I mean, I don't think, by way of example, I don't think John Pilgrim and Billy Russo at any point share a conversation, much less screen time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't need the bad guys teaming up in every movie featuring more than one villain, because that gets tired and stupid, and if they don't have concurrent goals, there's no point to it. But they should at least share, again, a bit of screen time, even if they just try to kill each other for 5 minutes. There should be something there to kind of weave things together, and it never, those two storylines at no point in this season ever actually blend at all. It's a terrible, terrible thing. It's jarring, it's annoying. There's ancillary characters that just make it worse, and I do want to get into that in a minute, but again, the first 3 episodes of this season give us some great stuff. First, you have Roadhouse Blues, which is a great episode of television. You have Frank, you have the type of area he's inhabiting right now. We get setups for some of the other stuff that's going on. We get this season has significantly less action sequences than the first season, but I do think they are largely better.
I want to piggyback on that statement, that one statement at the end there, because I was thinking about Titans as I was watching this. Now, you didn't watch Titans, but Titans was a lot of setting up a scene or setting up a scenario for the actors to talk in. They're in a warehouse, and they're in the warehouse so that they can talk and interact. And they're in one of Bruce Wayne's hideaway apartments, so that they can have time to interact. And this just goes on and on. Like, the scenes and the settings don't necessarily relate to furthering the plot along. They're just places for people to talk. And that's all I could think about with The Punisher Season 2. You have the doctor's house, you have the trailer, and like a few other different and for a little while there, Madani's apartment. And they just exist for people to have a place to sit down and talk. And the dialogue wasn't that interesting.
No, it really isn't. But again, so Roadhouse Blues, I think Pat Mullen, when he saw it, referred to it as an R-rated Knight Rider episode, which is probably not that far off. In all fairness, no, I loved the majority of that setup. I loved Frank just kind of being the guy passing through, still being Frank. You got a bit of. You get just that glimpse of what, if he wasn't as damaged as he is, the kind of life he might be leading, which it just heightens the tragedy. I mean, Frank Castle's entire story is a blood-soaked, gore-garnished tragedy. And thankfully there are things about this series, both Season 1 and Season 2, that get that right. Then we get one of my favorite moments. I honestly, I love the entire closing action sequence to Roadhouse Blues, because it starts with just a fist with a knife fight in a bathroom. Has some glorious blood, has some glorious stuff to it. I mean, he actually stabs a girl through the shoulder so hard he pins her to the wall.
Yeah.
He destroys some poor guy's skull. He breaks an industrial... I don't know how many of you guys have ever been in the type of establishment that this bar is kind of set in, but the sinks that they have in places like that, they're designed to withstand the weight of a 300-pound man leaning on them. And Frank shatters one of those with this guy's skull. Then we get the fight in the bar, and then that breaks into gunplay, all of which is great. But honestly, I think my favorite moment from all of that is Frank walks into the restroom after headbutting that guy on the outside the door. Walks in, sees the two girls menacing, annoying teenager who I have issues with, but we will get to. Sees that they've got there's a couple of knives in play, and he doesn't even blink. He just takes off his belt and wraps it around his left forearm.
Yeah.
This has now reminded me why I should wear a belt everywhere.
Just so you can take it off and wrap it around your arm.
Just in case.
Look, man, you have to use your arms to defend yourself, and there's a lot of sensitive blood vessels in there. But this leads into a couple of other great, again, this whole first 3-episode arc. This leads us to them being at the shootout at the hotel room in episode 2, rather, which is a really well shot, well executed gunfight, which leads us to Trouble in the Water, which is a better remake of Assault on Precinct 13 than the Assault on Precinct 13 remake that starred Ethan Hawke. That features a couple of really great things in that 3rd episode. One, just, Frank's rampage at the end. Oh, yeah. But the fact that John Pilgrim almost gets him. And I love because they don't, again, Frank and John don't share much screen time. But there's a beautiful and, again, kind of like tragic dichotomy between the two characters that is presented. And the fact that John almost gets him right then is a big deal. And again, those first 3 episodes are what I wanted out of this. I like the thought of Frank roaming around trying to figure out what he's doing in life now. Because if he's not going to be the Punisher, and he's not capable of being a family man for whatever reason, who is he? And I thought that was all, really solid stuff. And then Madani shows up on a helicopter and just ruins everything.
Right. Jump
swoops in and saves the day.
Go ahead and jump in here, Jesse.
Oh, well, I agree with what Rob's saying for sure. These first 3 episodes were great. Love that bar fight. Poor Ringo. I mean, you could just hear him getting stabbed over and over. The bouncer of the bar, and you're just waiting for him. Go ahead.
I forgot to mention about the bar fight. We got the logical escalation of the Joker's pencil trick from The Dark Knight.
Oh,
thank God for it, because I loved that shot so much. Thunk.
Oh, so brutal, and it gave you that taste of that was like, oh, we are back. We are back in the Punisher universe, back in the Marvel universe, and the Punisher's holding our hand, and it is going to be exciting, and it is going to be it's just going to be a bloody, brutal path or bloody, brutal journey we're going to follow. So, yeah, then as we go through here and we look at those first 3 episodes, I love the part where they're stuck and they are pinned down in that sheriff's office, jail, whatever it is, local jail there in northern Ohio, which, by the way, the town that they were in does not exist. But I immediately looked up and saw that when they were zooming in or they were outside of the jail, you saw the state of Ohio flag flying. I was like, holy crap, they're supposedly in Ohio. But anyway, I enjoyed all of that. Now, you talk about
the drunk and the guy who was just sleeping off his drunk guy, the guy in the drunk tank who they wind up recruiting, who's lying upon knowing what kind of trouble they're in, is, you better give me a scattergun because I'm still seeing double. and
when they have Frank tied up and he's begging, he's like, look, let me loose, and you're right there along with him. Turn him loose, turn Frank loose, and let him go and take care of business. And he does, finally. I don't know how long they drew that out, but it was enough to make me anxious. And I was finally like, okay, thank goodness. But yeah, you were talking about your story A and story B, and never the twain shall meet. My goodness. Billy Russo back again wasn't one of my favorite choices. And I was really confused at first when I didn't look at spoilers going into this, so I didn't know exactly what to expect from season 2. But when Billy's laying in bed and he has the mask on, and Madani's standing at the foot of his bed, and he has that mask on, and it's all like drawn all over. The first thing I'm sitting there thinking is like, who the hell puts a mask like that on somebody that's trying to recover from a horrific face injury? Well, then obviously we get the backstory behind all that, and I was really worried that he was just going to do the whole season with that mask on, but of course that didn't happen either. But I mean, I don't know. I really did not like the way that they played up the romance. Now, Winfree, I'm going to turn you loose here on. What do you call her again? Bargain basement Harley Quinn.
something like that.
Okay. Why don't you talk about this
look,
wonderful
how about we just call her, he's only a little broken, I can fix him.
Supergirl's sister's girlfriend. Ex-girlfriend.
There's at least 2 degrees of separation too far from the main character for that to mean anything.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Oh no, I turn it over to Winfree. Winfree has full reign here with Dr. Krista Dumont.
Oh, God, this.
All right, hang on. Before you light into this character.
Yeah. Please, go ahead, Mark.
Before you do.
I'm going to organize my thoughts.
Okay. As a villainous character, as somebody who's sort of in the ear of Billy Russo, first trying to, repair the damage, and then trying to encourage, and then finally pushing, so that he can fully realize his most evil self, I thought she was an interesting character. Say what you will about her acting, and you will. Say what you will about the way that she does it, and you will. I at least thought the necessity of the character and the idea behind the character was good and needed to be there. As far as, as a professional psychologist, which is what I assume she is.
Want to count the ethical violations that she incurs in the first 5
I
minutes?
was just getting to that. I was like, whether somebody would be this incompetent and this unethical, probably not, especially, working with the VA. But
how in the world did someone with her history of trauma even get clearance to work with a criminal like Billy Russo?
Again, why do the Marvel superpowers work the way they do? They just do. Don't worry about it.
No. I'm not asking about. This is the thing. I'm not asking about superpowers. All right.
No,
but
I'm
equating
about
Billy's miraculous recovery.
But I'm
really not.
I'm equating the fact that you have to take it for granted that she got the job. She's there. Let's deal with what we know instead of, trying to figure out, how they got there. They got there because they wrote the character that way and they wrote the situation the way they did. Let's not mince words.
The writing is fair enough.
Yeah, which is fine. I'm not saying the writing was spectacular with this season, but in defense of what all she brought to the table, I personally didn't think her acting was that bad. One of my favorite scenes of this season. And I'm going to need Robert Winfree to scream into a pillow at this point because I'm going to say this, and he's going to want to, and he's going to not be able to control himself. So do me a favor, bite a pillow. I loved the entire episode of Madani and her as they're drinking wine.
And you accused me of liking a good gay Cowboys eating pudding. See.
I loved it. It was so good.
No, it wasn't.
It was great.
Okay, look, if you want to argue that the idea behind it is good, yes, they're fundamentally posing the great moral quandary that we continue to wrestle with as a society about rehabilitation of people and whether or not your actions or your motivations are more important, so on and so forth. Fine, these are centralized questions to Western society. Fair. These 2 broads who can't act out of a paper bag do nothing but drag down and morally sermonize over what should have been.
It's not well written, but from some perverse level, I enjoyed watching it. I actually legitimately enjoyed that interaction between the 2 of them.
You must have just been so far beyond the bend with okay, half of this season is just going to suck. I'm going to lean into it.
Pretty much. So again, I don't find her to be that bad of an actress. She was fine on Supergirl, and I think. It's always whenever we talk about performances, is it the direction or is it the performance? Is it a little from column A, a little from column B? We don't know. We weren't there on set. Again, having seen her in something else, I'm aware the woman can act at least a TV level. So
I was going to say, she felt like to me the only reason she was in there was just to give Billy Russo something to do.
No. She played an instrumental part in him in the long road out of hell, which is his arc. The problem was they got to a point in the season where she wasn't really useful anymore, but they had 5 more episodes to go.
And then didn't just kill her.
Yeah, Russo.
Look,
How many times do I got to watch them screw and like hurt each other at the same time?
Really
I don't know how many times.
That they really only needed to do it once. I think that's the problem with this season, right? Is they take a good idea and they think it's so good they do it again. Then they do it a third time. And you're like, well, certainly they can't do it.
Just in case you didn't see, just in case you didn't pick this up.
Surely they won't do it a fourth time, and then they do it. And you're like, what the hell, man?
Yeah, I get it.
This was a season bereft of ideas. Like we talk about how did I use that word right, Robert?
You did.
Hooray! I mean, we talk about how a lot of the Marvel series, like, they don't have enough narrative for 13. They didn't have enough narrative for fucking 8 episodes, let alone 13. So they kept reusing the same ideas and in the same conversations over and over and over again. They stayed in Madani's apartment, and I want to talk about this a little bit later, but let's focus on Billy and the Doctor for right now. They stayed in Madani's apartment way too long. That went on for fucking ever. Again, it made me think of Titans when they were in Bruce Wayne's hideaway. But I digress. So there's some of my ideas about them. I think she was a needed character for Billy's arc to work, but then then she overstays her welcome, and they don't really use her effectively towards the last 4 or 5 episodes of the season, and then. Yeah. Then her final battle there with Madani.
Oh, that was so stupid.
It was like well, Madani's a terrible person, a terrible character who's done nothing this entire season.
Can I just say how much I hated? I genuinely hated the second to last episode because you throw her out a window and leave her in a puddle of blood. Then you have Russo choke the life out of Madani, and I'm dancing without my pants on, like, finally! And then 5 minutes into the next episode, no, they're both still alive. I just about wanted to throw something at my monitor.
Yeah, you can't kill the colored women. Is really what we've learned here.
Oh, well then.
Controversial.
Scream it loud and fucking proud. My God.
You know, those are the rules in Hollywood. # me too. All right. I've said all I'm going to say about that, except for this. Every complaint I said about the Doctor, the good Doctor, I have doubly so about Russo. The guy playing Billy Russo, Ben Barnes. Fucking, first of all, I don't know what happened between the first season and the second season, but he completely overacts in this season.
Hang on, I'm going to defend him a little bit here on that charge.
Hang on, let me get through this, and then you can debate me. I think he overacts a lot of it, and maybe if overacting isn't really the right interpretation of what I was seeing, it's the same dramatic points beaten over,
yes,
and over and over again before they move on, before he moves on and grows a little bit as a character. So maybe it's not so much overacting as it is he keeps doing the same thing over and over and over again and boring me to tears. There's a point in the series where he's like, I'm going to raise an army and I'm going to make everyone pay for all of my pain. And that somehow got muddled with him not remembering what he did to Frank's family, so he doesn't know why Frank wants to kill him. And so what would have been a really interesting plot turn for Billy, as becoming this ruthless street level gangster with an army of angry vets behind him, which is what I wanted to see and what I was hungering for.
Oh, I was so hopeful. Like when he goes up, when this starts going in that direction, I'm like, this could be good.
That feels like Jigsaw.
They started in that direction and then lost it again, and then he goes back to the apartment 6 more times to whine to the girlfriend. And I'm like, well, this is an utter fucking waste of time. All right, Robert.
Yeah, all right.
I need to take a break. Go ahead.
About Billy Russo, I won't. The reason I don't think he's overacting is very, very simple. Let me say, I agree with you about the boredom, about the structure, because yes, he does a lot of the same stuff multiple times to just fill time, basically. I don't think he's overacting because he is deliberately playing a character who has now suffered a pretty seriously traumatic brain injury. And I don't know about you guys, but I know a little bit about that, and the violent mood swings, the emotional outbursts. That's why. I mean, we saw Billy.
I mean, he's not Tom Hardy in Venom, but I do think that he was a little too over the top at times.
Have you ever seen someone with a? Have you ever seen like a recording or whatnot of a guy?
Yeah, no.
Who has suffered the kind of trauma he has having one of those breakdowns?
Again, we know where I work, right? I see it all the time.
Yes.
I see it all the time, but again, go ahead and make your point. I'm going to back off.
I mean, if you want to argue the specific nuances, like, okay, to what degree might he potentially be overacting? I mean, we can get lost in the weeds and the minutia if you feel so inclined.
Pass.
I thought he did a adequate job of portraying someone who now has, and when I say an emotional imbalance, I don't mean emotional like, I mean, a chemical imbalance in the brain. Like whatever damage Frank inflicted on him, and Frank inflicted a metric F-ton of damage onto that guy, all of which he had coming, mind you. But I thought he did a fine job of displaying someone dealing with, because your emotional outbursts like that are not emotional in the same way that the average emotional outburst is. There's genuinely a problem with your brain physiology or chemistry.
Okay. I think, the more you talk, the more I realize my problem isn't so much the acting as it is that's all there is. Which is absolutely fair and true. It's so many episodes, more than really necessary, of him having nervous breakdowns.
It's like, I mean, there's no way you couldn't see what was going to happen here. As soon as you found out that he lost his memory, you knew where it was going to lead to. It just took so fucking long to get there.
Yeah. It
took way too long to get to where we knew he was going to get his memory back as soon as he saw the skull. But we had to fill in time with him beating himself in the head and having these horrific visions, number one, and then the outbursts as well. And then of course we got Dr. Krista. She's helping him along there. But yeah,
she helps nothing.
Robert has opinions on her. Have you noticed?
I cannot wait to hear them.
All right. So, point being, with Billy, I see your point, and really, I think the issue was just the writing of it. If they'd given his, army another 2 episodes to grow, to encounter some setbacks apart from Frank beautifully murdering a bunch of them. If they'd given that some time if they'd given him something else to do besides whine at the flattest character in the whole show, and considering Madani's here as well as random teenage girl that's saying something, I think it would have played better. But Ben Barnes is a very capable actor, as evidenced in season 1, and I think he's in season 1 of Westworld.
Yes, he is.
Where he plays a vastly different character from Billy Russo and does so very capably. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, he's stuck trying to bounce off of the acting equivalent of particle board. I don't think there's a genuine emotional reaction from our Harley Quinn knockoff until he has a massive breakdown and starts throwing things and threatens to throw her out of a window, and somehow even that feels like she's not actually doing anything. I don't understand her character at all. Now, to the extent that Billy needed something else to work with as a character, I agree. To the extent that you could make it someone loosely associated with his rehab, or at least someone with the knowledge to do it, sure, that makes a lot of sense. I am down for all of that. I don't even hate the fact that there's another character that he develops genuine attachment for. In no small part because that's such a massive contrast from the first season when he's deliberately portrayed as this one step removed. I mean, he has the people that he served with that he thinks of as brothers in a lot of respect, but that he will absolutely sell out if necessary. So he's a very distant character and is presented as such. So again, seeing some of that shift in him, quite frankly, I really enjoyed, from a narrative perspective, the way they tried to make Russo sympathetic for a good chunk of the middle of the season. I kind of thought it worked. As long as he wasn't interacting with what's-her-face. Because he's, again, he is acting, he is overacting, and all she does is stand there with this blank look on her face like, I forgot that it's Saturday. I'm missing the sale at the supermarket.
If her job was to make me sympathize with Billy, it didn't happen.
Well,
I did not.
Her job was not to do that.
I know. It was, if it was, she did not do it.
No, I wound up sympathizing a bit with Billy just because, and I think the actor did a very good job of this. This is a guy who, on some level, knows, okay, bad things happened to me. I deserved it. I just can't remember.
Here's the problem with the Billy Russo thing. They needed to wrap up his recovery in 3 episodes, okay? They needed to, the whole idea of, Billy's on the loose again, we got to get him, Madani enlisting the help of the Punisher because she knows that he's the only one that can finish the job, and and now he's got some degree of guilt for having let him live. He never thought it would get this far, because the next part of the season should have been him running amok throughout New York City. We talked before about, first of all, it takes forever for him to get to the best part of his entire arc, which is his army of veterans. There needed to be more of that. It needed to be more destructive. It needed to be more all-consuming. Like, they needed to become terrorists, basically.
No, really what we needed, and I hate to draw the comparison, but we needed like a Bane takes over Gotham moment. Like, not just another
that's why
gang,
I said terrorist.
Let's genuinely, okay, here's this block of New York City. You know what? This is ours.
Whether you realize it or not, you actually just took the words right out of my mouth. That's what I'm saying. Like, he needed to, blow up buildings. And then everyone kind of turning to the Punisher like you got to stop him. He's out of control. Mm-hmm. That's the problem with this season, is that it starts to hint at things like that, and then it runs as far away from it as possible. Like, hey, let's do more S&M fucking. How about that? That's cool. All right.
How dare you kink shame, sir?
Jesse, I'm going to let you have the. Robert, did you feel like you ranted enough about this? Have you gotten that out of your system?
Do not short shift Robert here. Come on.
Okay, here's the crux of this female character, and
then pitch it to Jesse when you're done.
Why it's so bad. A, it's badly acted. Again, this is a flat performance. B, it's badly written. I mean, the subtext of this woman is literally, boy, I have daddy issues. My daddy was broken. Here's another guy who's a little bit broken, but boy, I can fix him. As though we haven't seen this in both real life and fiction.
Well, in defense of that, isn't that most women? I'm attracted.
They want to change a man.
I'm attracted to the broken bad boy because I can fix him.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Look, I don't want to get into the whole thing there. That's not actually how that works.
Okay.
Well, look, predominantly, I'll be brief. Predominantly, a significant portion of the attraction to the quote-unquote bad boy is that too many guys suffer from, again, air quotes, trademark, whatever, nice guy syndrome. I mean, feel free to ask any of your single female friends about this, but guys tend to come in 2 varieties. The doormat, bland guy who just agrees with everything she says, or the guy who engages with her. And frequently the guys who engage not frequently. A lot of the guys who engage,
what's fun?
Especially if we're talking in media,
what's fun?
Jackasses.
When you find a guy and a girl that are both pod people, that's fun. Those are fun to hang out with. Like, just complete, total polo wearing Mr. White folks people. Oh, when you get 2 of them together, oy.
But the point being that it's not about fixing him necessarily. It's a lot of it's just, hey, this guy's actually engaging rather than just agreeing with everything I say. I mean, Mark, you disagree with your wife. You probably disagreed with your wife while you were dating. I imagine Jesse's the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So you were engaging. You have disagreements. You are a unique person without being a massive jackass. Jesse.
Well, I was going to say, a massive jackass is my middle name.
Hence the Jesse, not Mark.
I was like, come on, let's be real here.
But the point being, again, we're now not only dealing with a character who is flat, who's bad, who's written as a series of cliches, more than anything else, who doesn't actually operate with anything approaching internal consistency. A person who's, again, ethical violations just in her time at the hospital. Not even after Billy breaks out, but literally just her time with him as a patient would likely end her professional career in legitimate circles. You then have her again, so much of her is just, well, I can fix him. And not only do I hate that as a general motif, I hate it when it's so blatantly not true. And I would have been better off with this if Billy was actively kind of bringing her to the dark side again. The crux of since I've called her bargain basement Harley Quinn, here's another reason why I think that both holds true and exposes a lot of the flaws within this. The Harley Quinn arc is about the Joker finding and exploiting some of these personality quirks in Harley over the course of time. In this instance, it's less about Billy kind of manipulating our Harley Quinn wannabe here. And she's Indian, right? We'll call her Bali Quinn. This is less about Billy manipulating Bali Quinn and more about Bali Quinn going, well, I've always kind of been a giant pile of dicks. So you know what? Let's just go with that. And it completely robs the narrative that this is based on of anything approaching impact or relevance. I mean, she might as well have pulled back a hood and gone, it was me, Austin, all along. I was always this way.
I did it.
Okay.
I did it.
Hang on.
For
She was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. She is of Italian, Irish, English, Spanish, and Portuguese. She's one of them damn Portuguese.
You gotta get the Portuguese. Okay, I apologize for my racially insensitive comments. I will refrain from making them in the future.
Hey, Jesse, she went to Ohio State University?
Hey,
that actually explains everything about what's wrong with her character.
2.5 hours north there. All right. Hey, real easy. I'll keep it real simple. We can move on there, Mark. I caught up on a lot of social media when Billy Russo and Krista Dumont had time on the screen together, because that's pretty much what I did. I picked up my phone. I looked at shit. Are they still on the TV? Yes, they are. Keep looking at shit. So
they had the same conversation 5 times.
I know, man. I know it. So I was not impressed. Just once would have been fine. And
can I dovetail this into Madani, please?
Do it. Sure. Let's do it.
I have no earthly idea why the showrunners looked at season 1, looked at all the success of season 1, got back in the writers' room, okay, we got a second season. We're coming off of this massive critical and commercial success. You know who we should bring back? Madani. I don't know who thought this was a good idea. I don't know which writer constructed her as a character and then went, I'm going to shoehorn this woman into everything, apropos of nothing. I mean, she's supposed to be the special agent in charge of Homeland Security in the city of New York. She is the worst boss in the world. Having her as your boss, I think I made this joke to you guys offline, is the equivalent of having Indiana Jones as your professor. You know at some point in the middle of the semester he's going to F off to save the world. Madani's the special agent in charge of the city of New York and at no point sets foot in the damn office. Like, this is actually a big job. You know, Homeland was spawned because of events in that city. And yet, this broad is in charge of it.
My new favorite thing is
run the asylum.
my new favorite thing is Robert Winfree saying the word broad.
I apologize. I apologize for my misogynistic comments. I will refrain from using them in the future.
No, please don't.
So again, she is terrible at her job on a fundamental level. Her actual job. Man, there's supposed to be a bit of a...
Mark, can you refrain from playing the games there, buddy?
I'm sorry. Please continue.
You're interrupting Winfree, and I am very invested in what he's having to say here.
I am listening.
Turn your fucking phone down, then.
Okay, so not only is she bad at her job, her arc as a character, I mean, arc is a horrible way to describe it. It's more of a dip. It's like a minor hiccup. It's a pothole on the road. It's supposed to be paying off her idealistic, I believe in the system character from season 1, because that was one of the bullet points around her character that never actually manifested itself in the entirety of that season. She's supposed to be unwinding mentally and emotionally because I can't handle that Billy Russo's still alive. I mean, how can he not? And and they spend way too much time with her thinking he's just playing everyone. No, Frank bashed his brains in. He can't remember. Then finally, like, oh,
you know,
God.
you wanted to just say "you stupid whore."
I most certainly did not want to say that.
Yeah, you
refrain
did.
from using misogynistic comments right there. That's
Yeah.
refrain right there.
Hold
Yeah.
on. I had another word. Yours was incorrect.
Okay.
I refrained myself. So then she decides to recruit Frank. And this actually at least makes sense from a character perspective because, you know, Billy shot her in the head and, you know, betrayed her in horrible ways. So on the one hand, her obsession, while deeply annoying, is at least justified, which is fair. Like, okay, fine. Sometimes perfectly justifiable character traits are annoying because of writing, acting, editing, whatever. But as long as they make sense, I can kind of go along for the ride. Fine. So she recruits Frank. Frank brings along a whole heap of baggage known as Storyline B that she at no point actually tries to get involved with, that she at no point really expresses interest in. And can I just say, like, all of the interactions between Madani and, what was it, Rachel?
Mm-hmm.
They made me want to pull my fingernails out with my teeth. Like, oh, I'm clearly damaged and have things going on. You're clearly damaged and have things going on. Want to talk about it? No, you don't want to know. Hey, you're clearly damaged and have things going on. Would you like to talk about it? Oh, you're better off not knowing. Fine, I'm leaving. Enjoy my apartment. Yes, I will, thank you. I'm going to sleep under your very expensive bed and pretend to be you by putting on clothes in this, like, very, very, like, bizarrely creepy scene that never actually pays off in any way, shape, form, or fashion. So, again, we're supposed to be paying off Madani's obsession with Billy, which, fair play, her obsession with him makes sense, and B, the death of her innocence, like, which is an absolute crock. That in no way is borne out by any of her I mean, I said this in season 1. Like, one of her first lines of dialogue is, I believe in the system, that she immediately contradicts with actions 5 minutes later. Which I'd be okay with her character being a massive hypocrite, but no one from the writer to the director to the actor thinks the character is behaving hypocritically, which is what really kind of kills it for me.
Well, I'll tell you what. The one character that at least, you know, in terms of
hang on. And hold on, just to wrap this up on Madani. In addition to being terrible at her job, unraveling publicly, I mean, everyone who looks at her knows there's something deeply wrong with her. I mean, at one point, even Curtis is like, don't you have a job to get back to? Like, no, I don't have anywhere else to be. Like, no, you're only drawing a government salary. You're only in charge of protecting the country. And despite being terrible at her job, undermining her career, bringing back a murderous vigilante. I love Frank, but he's a murderous vigilante. In the name of, going outside the law to murder someone else who you clearly have unresolved issues with. In addition to giving her what should have been narratively and emotionally impactful moments that shouldn't have been hers to begin with. I mean, here's what killed me, honestly. The scene when Billy is confronted with Frank being the one who, crippled him mentally and emotionally is kind of heartbreaking because Ben Barnes acts it the way that character should be played. It's Frank. He's my best friend. I know there was something there, but my immediate instinct in this moment is, this is my brother. This is the guy I became a Marine with. I fought, I bled, I killed other men beside this human being. This is one of the people in the world that means a great deal to me. And then Frank takes off the jacket and reveals the Punisher logo, and Billy melts down and proceeds to go on a shooting spree, which was kind of great. But his then response to that is, what the hell, Frank? Look at where we were. What did we do to get here? What happened? Which is a very logical question. And instead of confronting Frank, even over a radio or a phone call or something, he confronts Madani. So the big revelation that, all those people that you think you really care about and all those things you think you stand for, somewhere in your completely fragmented personality and memory is the reality that you sold every one of them down the river, and you had your surrogate family violently murdered for money and power. This should be a somewhat shattering revelation to Billy Russo, and it should come from Frank by all narrative rights. Instead, it's Madani who sucks at line delivery. And Billy basically no-sells the whole thing. And it pissed me off to no end. So in addition to her laundry list of crimes, which I haven't even gotten to the fact that she at one point drew her weapon and threatened an NYPD officer, at another point actually shot him 3 times in the chest. She is rewarded with all of this malfeasance, hypocrisy, stupidity, and massive waste of airtime at the end of this season with a job in the CIA. It just made no sense.
Well, she didn't grate on me as bad. I'll put that out there.
I envy you your emotional and intellectual ignorance.
Man, I think a lot of it is I focused on some of the positives that you pointed out. All right,
there are great positives to this season. I do want to. That is fair.
Yeah, she had that emotional motivation to kind of, you could see what she was doing sometimes, being driven by that motivation, and I didn't really hate her as bad as I did in season 1. I really disliked her in season 1. But
they brought in a worse, she's not actually better in season 2, but they brought in a worse character, so she looks slightly better by comparison.
that was their whole gambit all along. You won't notice this if you see this over here.
Well, look, the Doctor is the ugly friend that all the girls have to just make themselves look slightly better by standing next to her.
Brilliant.
From a character standpoint, that's all she is for this entire season. They saw a backlash from Madani and went, how can we make her better? Well, we can't, so let's just bring on someone worse.
And I honestly, and we kind of got that at the end, and somewhat we didn't, because we knew that it had to come down between Billy and Frank at the very end. But were you upset? Were you upset? Were you upset when you thought Madani killed Russo, or at least they led you to believe that?
No, she gave him a mortal wound. Yeah,
Okay.
that genuinely pissed me off. You built this entire emotional narrative around the betrayal of Russo, stretching across these 2 seasons, and the second most annoying character in the series throws the most annoying character in the series out a window and then shoots him 3 times in the abdomen before being choked into near death. But not actual death, because this season can't give me anything really nice that lasts.
Well, again, they needed to give Madani something to do.
Yeah, she's in
I
it.
just have I have to ask the question: when you sat around the writers' room and like, okay, season 2, who are we bringing back?
Mm-hmm.
Why did Madani's name even get mentioned?
Because she has a vagina.
Yeah, so does the teenage girl that Frank drags around. 5
Well,
different
we need to
states.
talk. We need to talk about her, and we need to talk about the Pilgrims. So when you're
yes.
when you're done mansplaining about Madani, we'll head on over there.
No, I think that's all I've got. Like, again, just Madani makes everything worse. The Doctor makes everything worse, and there's so much of both of them in this season that it just drags everything down around it.
Jesse, I'm going to give you the last word here on Madani.
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean,
Hashtag bring back micro.
I was worried that it was going to come down to Madani killing Billy Russo, and it's funny how it all ended up. They glanced at that for a second, like that's exactly how it was going to go. And I was worried Frank wasn't going to get to be able to put any bullets right into old Billy, but it that's probably about the one thing that they may have got right. Play your fucking game. Just go ahead and play it.
Right.
I mean,
Damn it!
but no, I was
Stupid commercials.
Damn ads anyway. Yeah, I was worried that they were going to do that to me, and if you could, I guess, give credit to the writers, they strung me along there.
Look, I give credit to the test audiences who told them this was a bad idea with feedback.
I'm done. Mark Radulich, please move on.
My
sir.
only other comment about Madani
Fucking
is
Police
that
Academy.
is that for all of
No. Mahoney is actually the name of the police sergeant that she shoots a few times and pops up at random intervals to essentially attempt to serve the same narrative purpose that Madani did, or was supposed to in season 1, where, hey, I'm just a beat cop and I'm in way over my head and I don't like any of this.
Well, I mean, he's there. He's kind of set up as a foil for Madani, because Madani has, her whole arc. Her whole character is that she's morally compromised and she's psychologically ruined. Here you have Mahoney, who's like, look, I don't give a shit what happened to you or what your reasonings are. Frank Castle is a murderer, and he needs to be brought to justice. Period, comma, the end. And it's like and he's sort of the moral compass for the sort of the moral wall for Madani to play off of.
He's the one fucking cop that actually acts like a cop in this fucking show.
Yeah, unfortunately, he gets beat to shit, and his message is undermined by how they treat the character, including throwing him off a bridge and having him nearly get killed in a wreck. So, and then being nearly left for dead by the Punisher. I mean, granted, he saved him from burning up in the car, but still.
Look, Frank did what he had to do. He wasn't going to have a good man's death on his conscience like that. Once he was free of the shrapnel field and the ambulances were called, like, you're not bleeding out. Just sit here, you'll be fine. And then Mahoney, I love that, because when Mahoney draws his weapon, like, I'm going to... You're not leaving, Frank. And Frank just looks over his shoulder like, shoot me if you're going to shoot me, man. I'm leaving.
Yeah.
All right. I want to make this one statement just because she's not in it enough to really warrant a full-on conversation, but it has to be said, it has to be acknowledged, and then I want to spend the rest of the hour, the rest of the show talking about the B plot, and then I think we're done. We needed to see Karen Page and the Punisher fucking. Holy cow.
Oh my.
Their sexual chemistry just lights up the screen.
I agree with you about the chemistry. Those two play off each other incredibly well. I don't need to see.
I mean, we really don't. But my point being is that Deborah Wall walks in front of the camera when she's in the same room as Bernthal. Hot and steamy. My goodness, pants are creamy. It's Deborah Wall, man, every time, like, you could just see her undressing him with her eyes in every scene, and like, including ones where they're trying to rescue him from the hospital. It's hysterical. She is, I don't know if that was like purposeful acting on her part or, you know, or direction or whatever, but yeah, man, every time the two of them are in the same room, it's just like, wow, you two need to be making babies.
She's definitely, she's got the hots for old Frank there, for sure.
Yeah, she does. She wants to gargle his ball. That's what she wants.
Okay. So anyway,
she wants to get Richard Nixon up in his ass.
No,
You have led an interesting life, apparently, Mark.
okay. So anyway, there is.
I've got at least a few more of those in me. You sure you don't?
You just keep them to yourself. Hold them for another day.
Okay.
You've got one out, all right? It's hard for me to see right there at the beginning when we see Frank go to bed with that bartender lady. I can't even remember her name.
Beth.
Thank you. And it's hard for me to actually accept that from the Punisher I know. I know I've got to separate the comics from the show that we're getting. We got to show John Bernthal's take on the Punisher as having some type of emotion and wanting to try and get back to reality. But to watch him go to bed with that lady, I was like, man, this is, for some reason, it just doesn't feel like the Frank that I know. I feel like he's so devoted to his wife that just passed. This is something
But that's not even the best part. That's not even the most human part. The best part was when he sees the kid. And he's trying to not look like a creep. And he's like, hey, let's get pancakes.
Yeah.
That was the best.
No. The best thing about that interaction was he looks at those guys. No, kid, I'm just some guy who could be here. For all you know, I could be a Rangers fan because the kid's in a Red Wings jersey.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Are you? I am. I am. The Rangers suck. Yes, they do. Like, there's just a bit of the long-suffering sports fan that creeps out of Frank in that moment. Like, no, I could have chosen the Islanders, man. And I went with the Rangers, and boy, have I been suffering ever since.
Yeah, it's just hard for me to see and accept Frank Castle in that role of trying to move on with somebody else or even just try to pass the time with somebody else. He's a human man. I understand this, but regardless, it felt out of place to me. All right, that's just my own personal opinion. You, sir, Mark Radulich, obviously felt, my goodness, get that shit on. Winfree, do you have any opinion on that?
No, I'm okay with this take on Frank trying to move on because, I mean, he's not bed hopping. This is not someone who...
That's true.
Nor is this the Brazzers Punisher porn that we're all hoping for.
No, look, Mark, you're the only one hoping.
Mark is furiously searching for that right now.
Look, Mark
That'll be the next thing we hear.
Oh God, do I actually? Nope, I'm not going to say the line. I'm not going to do it. I'm just not. All right. No, I was okay with it because I thought it was again. Frank's kind of trying to get his stuff together at that point, and finds a woman he has a bit of a brief but a genuine connection with, and he meets her kid, and they kind of get along, and it's just a little bit of, this is kind of who I would like to be, or who I would have been, if only I weren't me, type of scenario.
Hey, it's like
if I were the best version of myself, this is what I would be. This is who I would be with. This is what I would be doing. But I'm not. I'm me, and therefore, bloody mayhem.
Hey, it's like Sam Kinison once said, you should never have sex with a woman unless you're truly in love. Now, that may be for a very short period of time. It may only be for a night, but you should be in love.
Now, I just want to ask a real quick question there, Winfree. Do you think there should have been more Karen Page in this season, or do you feel that what we got is adequate?
There should have been more Karen Page playing tonsil hockey with Frank's nuts.
Any more, Mark? You want to get them all out right now?
No, I'll sprinkle them in like so much salt.
Yes, please.
Mark, that's not salt. Salt's a flavor enhancer. What you have is like raw peppercorns that just overpower everything when you bite into them.
Good. Whatever floats your boat, but Daddy-O.
Hey, you're the one who chose the cooking metaphor. I just ran with it.
Will you please answer his question so we can move on?
I think the reason I'm okay with it being the way it was that when Frank comes back, it is deliberately kept low-key. There's a few criminal elements you pick up on it. I mean, he just kills the vast majority of people who see him. Or they know enough or they're in on him being here kind of on the down low. When he gets caught, that's kind of a big deal. And that's the point when, Karen shows up as soon as she is made aware of Frank's presence. Mm-hmm. They just didn't have a reason to have her be there prior to that point. God, I just want to say there was a slightly missed opportunity I felt when they kind of said good, because Frank is, and I do want to talk a bit about how much I thought they completely fumbled the ball on Frank killing innocent people and him dealing with that.
You know what? Go ahead and do that now because like I said, I want to talk about the B arc and the B arc characters, and then I want to call it a night. We're already at this a little over an hour, so just hit because it's a major point in the story, and I want to know what you mean by you think they fumbled it.
Well, it's a major point for about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Before the basics of forensics point out that no, it didn't happen that way. Like, if you want to set up Frank to have a crisis of conscience by getting him to kill innocent people, fine, let's do that and run with it. But it felt like they set that up. They go through an episode that had potential to be great but wound up half-assed because they waste so much time with, I can't actually write subtext into my story, so supertext. We'll genuinely have these two people mulling over crappy wine about the nature of man. This won't horribly throw a wrench into the plot structure or anything. Philosophical discussions break out in Punisher all the time, right? No jarring tonal shift here.
Seemed fine to me.
Mark, we've established how... Look, we understand the Stockholm Syndrome had kicked in at this point for you. All right, you were Belle in the library with the Beast. Like that's where you were just emotionally with the show at this point. For the rest of the world, I hated everything about the conversation those two had up until the last minute of that episode when I went, you actually had to have that some variation of that conversation to set up this point. Curse you for badly executing this then. Instead of me just wanting to excise half the episode, it became crap. I'd have to actually rewrite it in my head. But if you're going to set up Frank kills someone innocent on accident in the midst of his bloodlust, fine. But it felt like they wrote that and then went, Frank would probably just off himself. Crap, we can't do this. Our version of Frank Castle would not live with himself if he took these actions even accidentally, so we have to absolve him of this very, very quickly and very, very obviously. Mm-hmm. That's my gripe with it.
All right. So we have...
Oh, sorry. The missed opportunity that I think they had. Because there's this great moment when Karen is there trying to, help Frank as the member of the law offices of Nelson, Murdoch, and Page that have now been shut down because Netflix canceled the series, so thank you very much for that. Oh, I'm so pissed about that.
Bad stuff.
But there is this great moment when Frank looks at her and says, you still work for that Murdoch guy, right? Because Frank knows that Matt is Daredevil. So Frank looks at her and goes, you still work with that Murdoch guy, right? Yeah, I work there. I notice he's not with you because he's a good guy. I really wanted, just when they said goodbye, I wanted him to look at her and go, tell Red I said hey.
Oh, yeah.
And just the last scene we get of her in relation to Frank is just this like quasi wide-eyed look as she realizes that Frank also knows who Matt is. Just tell Red I said hi, or because the conversations between Daredevil and Frank from season 2 of Daredevil were genuinely great stuff.
Yes, it was.
I would have liked a little callback to that. I mean, frankly, I also would have loved just a bit of closure on Micro from Frank's perspective. And I think there's a very easy way to do it. And there's a very character savvy way to do it. When they're looking for Billy and they can't find him. I mean, Madani knows basically everything that happened between Frank and Micro. The fact that you didn't go to Frank and say, don't you have a buddy who worked at the NSA who was able to find you when you just really didn't want to be found? And I just wanted Frank's response to be, oh, you mean something along the lines of, oh, you mean Micro. No. Micro got out. He got his family back. He got his happy ending. He's the one genuinely good thing I've done with my life since I got shot in the head and my family died. We're leaving him alone. Instead, he just kind of is never addressed again, despite being a profoundly important character just in season 1. Like, setting aside all the source material, they had a relationship that was built between the two of them. Mm-hmm. And it's just never addressed again. I think that was and again, even just an explanation about why he's not there. And again, I think Frank just kind of being, no, he's got his family back. I will not put my friend in this position again. Makes sense for Frank as a character.
All right. I'm going to cut it there. We need to talk about Amy. We need to talk about the Pilgrim. So the B arc in The Punisher had a lot of potential, and I think the idea of the Punisher having a sidekick girl, like a couple episodes in.
Isn't there an Elseworld, like a quasi Elseworld tale where there's like his daughter doing his job?
Oh boy, I don't know. Not off
I
the
could
top
swear
of my head.
I could swear there is a variant that's like Lauren Castle instead of Frank.
I'll research that. You keep talking, Mark.
Well, there's a couple of episodes in. There's the bit where she dresses up like a little tartlet, and they raid this guy's photography studio. And I wanted more of that.
I laughed so hard at that. Like, he's kind of a scumbag, but I don't think you have to kill him. And Frank's like, you can burn the place down if it'll make you feel better. And the next thing we see is them walking away from a burning building.
Look, Frank having a Robin, a sidekick, is an interesting thing, and I think needed to be explored. The problem is and this is a theme throughout the season. They teased you with a really great idea, then they utterly abandon it, and then she essentially, for like 8 episodes in a row, sits in the stupid trailer. And you're like...
And does nothing but whine about sitting in the stupid trailer.
Yeah. At one point, she's like, I'm making spaghetti. Because we've got nothing else to do.
I mean, she should have been... As it is, she wound up just being too annoying for me to actually care about her. But she's meant to represent something to Frank, and if, I mean, and this is part of my problem with, again, elements of the whole season. At the end, when he sends her off on the train to a better life somewhere, he just gets kind of, sometimes things come into your life and they just change everything. Like, really? This is going to be your this small, obnoxious grifter teenager turned my life around.
But that's the thing, it's like, I'm fine with...
If that's going to be your point, it better show off more on screen than it did.
Right, that's the problem, is that, like, they essentially gave him this character to play off of, and then they're like, well, we got to do the Billy Russo stuff, and she's not a part of that. So they kept compartmentalizing her, but in, like, really stupid ways. So as far as Georgia Wiggum as Amy Bendix, I thought she was fine. I liked the character. I liked her interactions with Frank. Everything from the very beginning when she calls him Rough Road. I thought they had a very good, I thought they had a very...
When they're on screen together, they play off each other very, very well.
Right. The problem is they utterly waste her after about the 3rd episode. All that stuff in Madani's apartment and then in the trailer. That's all she does. She just hangs out there.
Go get spaghetti.
Then you have this... So the whole arc is basically she has pictures of this senator being gay, and they're supposed to be used for blackmail, and that whole thing goes astray. And later on in the season, they start to touch on this really rich family and why they're protecting him. Obviously, they don't want they're a conservative alt-right family, and they don't want it known that he's gay.
Right, please.
Conservative right family, and they don't want it to be known that he's gay because that runs counter to that whole political platform. Okay,
is it controversial?
Controversial. So here's the thing. That's all great grist for the mill. That's all interesting stuff. I think here's the problem with this season. I think they really needed to pick one story and then do a lesser B plot, not essentially two A plots, because that's what happened here. Because
I would have been. Sorry, go ahead.
This by itself, exploring this family and how powerful they are, and seeing Frank get into situations where he can't shoot his way out because this family is so damn powerful, and they're protecting the senator and giving more for the senator to do other than wonder why Frank punched him in the fucking face for an episode or two. Like, that was all interesting stuff that they didn't really deal with because they ran out of time. They were too busy dealing with Billy. And, again, then they create this hitman character in The Pilgrim who is okay and everything, but you don't spend enough time with him, and what time you do spend, he's hitting himself with a fucking belt or whatever, and it's like, or he's getting a blowjob from a hooker, which is fine and all, but, it's like, I never really got a sense of who he was or what he was about. And then, or what his connection to this family was, so that when they're trying to pay off that storyline, it all feels really shallow. Go ahead, Robert.
Okay, there's a couple of points about this. One, I think if they were going to do these two stories that just don't mesh together at all, separate them distinctly. And by that I mean, give me you want to do a 13-episode series, if you think you have enough material for that, fine. If you want to do Billy Russo's return, fine. Give me 6 episodes that is Frank and this girl and them dealing with this.
Right.
And then do the Billy stuff. Don't try to do them at the same time.
They should have done it the way Daredevil Season 2 was, where half of Daredevil was Daredevil versus the Punisher, and then the other half was, fuck me, it's Elektra. They should have done it the same. Yeah. They should have done it the same way. They should have started off with the Punisher, the girl, and the Pilgrim, closed up that storyline, and then Billy Russell's long road out of hell, and then that would have been fine.
Real quick, just so I can piggyback off the Elektra stuff, Marvel Knights version Punisher 2099, another take on the year 2099, featured Cassandra Castle, who goes by the alias of Cassandra Nachios. She is the daughter of Frank Castle and Elektra. So that's what you're thinking of there, Winfree.
Terrific.
That must not have been a very pleasant sexual experience for either of them.
What? I wasn't going there, but
well, no, when we see the Brazzers porn of Punisher and Elektra.
Why don't you look that up there on your phone, Mark?
I will. And let me make sure. Let me make sure the sound's up. You can hear all the moaning.
Please, sir.
I'm just saying. Look, there's costuming in the bedroom, and then there's the direction those two took it.
All right.
I can't agree with Winfree more on the whole separating the two. I think that was a brilliant way of doing it. And again, reduce it down to 10 episodes and give the Pilgrim stuff more time, just like you're saying, Mark, and then reduce Billy Russo's arc.
Look, cut Billy Russo down, significantly reduce the crappy doctor. Have Billy – okay, let's make this better then for the sake of argument. We go through, 5-6 episodes. Okay, let's cut it to 10 episodes for the season. The first 5 or 6 are Frank and Pilgrim and that whole, again, the B plot. Have it resolve even basically the same way they actually do in the show. Fair enough. It's a perfectly acceptable resolution. It's rushed in the actual show, but the execution of it is it is rushed, but fine. That's a way to wrap that up. I'm down. I'm completely okay with that. You could even, if you wanted to, have part of the impetus for Frank being in New York when Billy wakes up instead of Madani flying out to find him is that he goes there to confront the senator, who is a senator from the state of New York. So, you have some ways to marry them a little bit better, or at least transition from plot from the first half into the second.
Yeah.
Then in your second half of the season, Billy recovers himself, or we discover for the first time that Billy is basically in recovery. We get terrible doctor who makes the terrible decisions. We can even keep that as long as the payoff is Billy violently murders her in a fit of rage. He spends too much time with her and realizes, my God, I've spent hours and hours of my life in your presence. This will not stand, sir. And proceeds to just cut her to ribbons. Then goes on his terrorist rampage with his army buddies, which, again, we improve by actually spending some time with it. Frank winds up dealing with them, and which leads us to the close of that whole episode, instead of trying to shoehorn both of them together in ways that don't actually work or make sense. So,
dude, how much of a cliffhanger would it have been after the Pilgrim arc? They do like a quick 30 seconds of Billy Russo opening up his eyes, in the hospital bed, and then we hit B plot, or the second plot of that season. If they did it that way, that'd been awesome.
Frankly, if you could also do it if you wanted to be really kind of sneaky about it. Again, you still end with Frank and John, nodding at each other at the end of that thing, because I have to talk about their relationship a little bit.
Oh, it's great. It's great.
Go ahead. Jump into it.
Okay, I feel like part of the reason they brought in John Pilgrim was because they did so much damage to Frank in season 1 as a character. And I don't mean like metaphorical damage. I mean they beat the dog snot out of Frank Castle. He got shot, he got stabbed, he got abused, he got dropped off of buildings, the whole 9 yards. Like, bad stuff happened to him physically. And they brought in Josh Stewart to play John Pilgrim, and Josh Stewart's a solid actor. And they said, Josh, we like you, we like your work, here's the character, and we're just going to warn you, we have the same amount of physical damage for main characters allotted for season 2, but we can't throw all of it at Frank. A lot of it's going to fall on you. Because this season beats the crap out of him. I mean,
yeah.
He gets, the fight that he has with his former, racist gang buddies. I love the structure of that fight, because we see him after he has won, and there's never really any doubt about that. But we then get to see him trying to fix himself physically, and what caused those things to happen in the fight. So he headbutts a guy in the mouth, and then back in his hotel room winds up pulling his teeth out of his skull.
Gosh. Yes.
He has to reset his jaw after it's been broken.
Oh, so great.
He winds up, he gets this pretty horrible gash along his side and his ribs that later, after the car wreck he's involved in, actually shows bone. He gets shot in the thigh with a shotgun at one point. There's a glorious scene that's like a step up from a great scene in No Country for Old Men. In No Country for Old Men, it's Javier Bardem picking buckshot out of a wound in his thigh, but it's not as bad as this one. Here and they did a great job with the effects of, the damage that him sitting there in his hotel room with, the needle nose pliers pulling out the buckshot. Because he gets put through the ringer. But keeps coming. And the fight, when we finally get to the fight between there's two great scenes between Frank and John. One is their gunplay in the hotel, which is a great and a well-shot gunfight sequence. They shoot at each other blindly. They both take appropriate cover. They change rooms and change position. Frank at one point just barrels through a badly damaged wall. It's all great. And then that leads to, there was such like dark humor in that whole episode.
Oh, yeah.
Because Frank kidnaps the senator, which incidentally, That is the worst protected senator in the history of all film and television. Frank literally walks up to the door, rings the doorbell, the senator answers, and then he punches him in the face. Like, that's not how protection for anyone on that level works. I couldn't have watched the series with my late grandfather because he would have smacked me for watching something this violent. I mean, I would have watched it anyway, but he would have. But he worked I occasionally gripe about the representation of bodyguard and protection detail because my maternal grandfather spent about 30 years on the CHP, and the last several of those were in protective services for the governor and the lieutenant governor specifically in California. And he educated me on occasion on proper protection procedures. So watching a senator have nothing, not even an aide, there's not even like a senatorial page in that room. It's literally just this one guy. Oh, it's the worst. Anyway, jokes about that aside. Frank kidnaps him and then says, "Bring me the girl," because he thinks that John Pilgrim has kidnapped Amy or Lauren or whatever her name is. He actually hasn't. She just stowed away in the back of his car and steals a shotgun. Frank goes to confront Pilgrim after he's informed of this. He leaves the senator with Curtis, who winds up having the best crisis of conscience maybe in the history of this show. Is Curtis and the senator talking, Curtis going, "Man, I don't know what I'm doing here." Mm-hmm. And the senator goes, "Well, why are you here?" Like, "I just want to go home, man." "Okay, why don't you?" "You know what? That's a good question. Why the hell don't I?" Come on, buddy. We're going to fix this right now. Like, God bless Curtis, man.
All right.
But the point being, Pilgrim does actually wind up with the girl as Frank loses the senator. So they exchange a trade. Frank just bluffs him. Frank bluffs an explosive that leads so it can wind up being just a fight between the two of them. John loses his gun. Frank grabs it, points it at him, and tries to shoot, but it clicks empty. And Frank looks at it. It was the great. I laughed so hard at that moment. They then proceed to beat the crap out of each other, and Frank winds up stopping short of killing him. But there's this genuinely great bit of dialogue between them because it is so simplistic. Frank just looks at him and goes, "Really, you shouldn't be doing this, man. We're going to have to kill each other. And why are you doing this?" And John's response is, "They've got my boys. And I know you never got a chance to save your family, but if you could, what would you have done for them?" Frank just kind of sighs. And he goes, "Anything," because he knows this. And Josh Stewart on the other side, "Well, here we are," is literally the line of dialogue. And it is. I just love that because while they are very different characters in a lot of respects, they are both men who, do the violence that needs to be done from their perspective.
Yes.
They have people that they genuinely love and care about. They're not maniac. They're not sociopaths. They're not devoid of human emotion. They're just at crossed purposes. And especially after, the emotional context of all the Billy and Frank stuff, the fact that you just had these two guys who have nothing against each other personally, they just wind up in a position where I'm going to do whatever it takes for what I want, for my perspective, and you're going to do whatever it takes for your perspective. We just have reached an impasse. And, I also liked that Frank let him live in no small part because his last request wasn't "spare me." It was just, "I know you're going after them. They've got my boys. If you could not kill them in the crossfire, that'd be great."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they built both those guys up to be tough sons of bitches. We already knew Frank was, but they had to do just like you said. They had to treat the Pilgrim and show how tough the Pilgrim was and his motivations. And this is what's beautiful about the portrayal of the Punisher in this series. I did not know if I did not know if Frank was going to kill this guy or not, because I could see him killing him, and I could walk, on the next episode, and I find out that the Pilgrim's dead. I'd be like, okay, well, that's Frank.
Yeah, his response just being a nod, like, yeah, all right, that's fair, and then crushing his skull with that, canister he had.
And I'd be like, well, that's Frank, and he's doing this because he felt there was a justifiable reason to do so, because this man was what he perceived as evil. But I loved it. I loved it when you find out that the Pilgrim is still alive, and Frank spares him and lets him go get his, of course, goes and gets his children. So either way was going to be a perfect ending for me. I thought I could understand both viewpoints and both outcomes if it were to come to that. So as for the Pilgrim character altogether, I really enjoyed seeing. This was somebody that was completely new to me. This, I don't think this person. I did a little bit of research, but I don't think this person has a background in the comics. So if they
you talking about the Pilgrim?
What's that?
You talking about the Pilgrim?
Yeah.
The Pilgrim is the Mennonite.
The Mennonite? Okay. All right. So that is somebody.
Wait. So in the comics, he's actually the Amish Mafia?
Yes. The Mennonite first appears in Punisher Max #3, created by Jason Aaron and Steve Dillon. An unnamed farmer, simply known as the Mennonite, lived in a community of Amish farmers. His wife Mary was sick and did not look like she was getting better. The two sons found a box full of dangerous weapons. When the Mennonite caught them, he took the box and buried them in a tree in a field. Giving into his faith, he prayed to God for some way to help his wife, only to get the word from his sons that someone named Rigoletto was looking to hire him. Resigned, he takes his box of weapons and heads on his way. He enters the city to meet with Rigoletto, whom he refuses to divulge his Christian name, and takes the job of killing the Punisher, though only with the tools that his religion allows. The Mennonite and Punisher face off, with the former using a hammer, horses, and his bare hands to take on the latter in a fight. Tiring out, the Mennonite reaches for one of the Punisher's guns, only to get electrified. The Punisher drops a safe on his head, killing him. Meanwhile, spoilers. Ooh. Meanwhile, his sons wait with Mary, unaware their father failed them.
Oh, so this has got a more rosier ending than the comics. Interesting. Yeah. Well, I stand corrected. Of course, I was looking for the Pilgrim. I was like, oh, Pilgrim, Marvel Comics couldn't come up with shit. So no wonder. You found it pretty easily. So let's just say I didn't research as hard as you did. Way to go, link. Mark. Put in research.
There was a link in the Wikipedia page.
Fuck off. And I really enjoyed that character. I thought it brought this. His arc was probably the most interesting to me throughout this season. Billy Russo, okay, yeah, but I saw enough of him in the first season. This guy was awesome. So I enjoyed it. I had a good time. As for Amy, by the way, I didn't get my opinions in on Amy. Hey, I understood why Frank felt the need to protect her. I don't want to say she felt like a necessary evil, but she sometimes it felt like she kind of overstayed her welcome, and yes, sometimes she just felt like she was sitting there doing nothing. Which what do you expect?
Times when she was literally sitting there doing nothing.
I'm making spaghetti.
I wonder why I got that impression. But yeah, that's kind of all I have to say on that.
So my final word on this, and then we're going to close up. When it was over, I love the scene of the Punisher tricking the two teenage gangs into the warehouse or whatever.
Best ending ever.
And they don't realize that they've been hornswoggled, and Punisher just lights them up. He's like, "I'll dance with you," and he's got a new vest on and everything. He just blows them the fuck away. Not since the Shield have I run into my bedroom and yelled out, something and scared the shit out of my wife. In this particular case, I kind of channeling my dad. I banged open the door, and I'm like, "Melissa, he wouldn't stop being the Punisher. He just couldn't stop." And she was like, "Why are you yelling?" Anyway, so.
Oh man.
Yes, dear, that's very nice. I have to be up in 3 hours. Please go to sleep.
Peter, I have a mammogram in the morning. That's a reference, Jesse, to Family Guy.
Is it Family Guy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, I like the way that it ended. For all the shit we're giving the season, and believe me, there's a lot of shit for it to be given. There's a lot of problems with season 2. It's not great, but it ended so good I can almost forgive some of the problems I had with it. Jesse, final word, and then let Robert give his final word, and then we're done here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't agree with you more. That was the most pure Punisher moment that we've got out of all 2 seasons, was just that last, what was it, maybe not even 5 minutes. And it's him.
Just him taking the call from Madani. I got a job offer for you. No, thanks, I've got a job.
Yeah, and he walks in, and all you see is just the barrels ablazing, the skull on his chest, and his face being lit up. And it was just perfect. It was the purest representation of what I wanted to see from this series. But so it's kind of sad, to see that perfect ending, and that I think it just came out today that they have no intention, or maybe it was yesterday, because Winfree, I saw you'd commented about it, and I think, Mark, you shared it. There's no intention of renewing this for a season 3.
No, that's because Disney is having its own streaming service, and they own part of Hulu now with the Fox deal.
And we were talking, they have to put these guys on respite for 2 years. Is that the thing?
3.
Were they 3? 3?
That was my understanding. I might be misreading.
Okay, that's sad. I mean, it really is. And do you think Bernthal, never say never, but do you think Bernthal's going to come back to...
it depends. If he's too busy, no. If he's not busy, why not?
I told one of my brothers this, and I have to share this bit of horror with you two, because this is horror that must be shared.
Oh, no.
It's going to be on ice, and when he comes back, it will have been about 3 years, which is about enough time for Joe Quesada to decide that Spider-Man has to be rebooted to be in high school again.
Oh, no.
And we're going to get the Punisher.
Okay.
As he jokes his way through trying to kill 16-year-old Peter Parker.
Oh, gosh.
And you tell me I'm wrong.
I can't.
There's no way. There's no way I would even attempt to try and watch something like that.
Look, neither would I, but let's be clear about this. On a Disney Plus streaming service, are you really going to show this?
No. No, you're not.
It'll be on right after the Tiger and Dazzler show.
So,
look, the profoundly sad thing is it's going to disappear forever into the ether after Fox decides no, you can't even... after Disney decides, no, Netflix, you can't show any of our content, even if it's stuff you created. They're going to get again, they're just going to be kind of washed from the Netflix, from being streamable on Netflix, and unless they actually sell the rights to the individual to broadcast those shows back to Disney, they're just not going to be anywhere, and it's profoundly sad.
It is. It is. Well, my final thoughts on the season as a whole. Listen, I'm biased. Punisher is my favorite Marvel character. I was extremely excited.
God, that makes what I said even worse, doesn't it?
It does, dude. It really does. Season 1 was... I remember the trailer for Season 1 hitting, and just watching that. I probably watched it 5 or 6 times. I don't do that normally.
So good.
Yes.
Setting the gunfire to Metallica's one.
There is no doubt in my mind that I was going to watch this series when it happened. And so when Season 2 hit, I'm on here. I probably gave Season 1 much more of a glowing review than I did Season 2 because there was a lot more pitfalls here. But, again, I'm glad I got to experience Season 2 just as much as I did Season 1. Go with God, Frank Castle, because I hope to see you again. But if not, I'm glad to have seen Bernthal's representation of the Punisher on Netflix, and I hope it comes back at some point. So, Winfree?
Can we all just agree that John Bernthal's take on Frank is definitively the best representation of Frank Castle we've had so far?
No doubt in my mind.
Dolph Lundgren.
Oh,
Yep.
Shut up.
Gosh.
You are not Pat Mullen. You do a bad representation.
Come on, God. For years I'm asking you why are the innocent punished and the guilty alive? Where is justice? Where is punishment?
Watched the movie one time. I watched it one time, and I was probably a teenager, if that, and I knew how bad that movie was.
We're gonna have to do a commentary on that one night then.
I almost wanted to a couple nights ago.
Dolph Lundgren karate fighting his way through a Japanese tea house at one point in that movie. Look, let me be clear about this. I think Lundgren had the physical presence to pull off the Punisher. I even think he might have had the acting range for a very limited take on the Punisher. Yeah, that movie is so badly constructed that it had no hope. I mean, and look, let me also be clear about this. I don't think they've ever had a bad actor for Frank. Again, you had Dolph originally, and Dolph in the 80s was Dolph in the 80s. We all knew what we were getting into, in theory. Thomas Jane's version of the Punisher, while wildly different from all other takes on him, basically, Thomas Jane's not a bad actor, and that movie, again, suffers from structural problems more than acting problems. Plus, that movie also has Kevin Nash, and it can only any movie featuring Kevin Nash can only be so bad. And yes, that actually does include the second Turtles movie.
Super Shredder.
He was the Super Shredder. You also have, I believe it was Ray Winston who plays him in Punisher Warzone.
Oh, the guy from oh gosh, I used to know it off the top of my head, but yes. Shit, what show is he off of? It was an HBO show, and it was like about Romans.
Arliss? Rome?
Fucking V for Vendetta?
V for Vendetta. The Wire.
Please, continue, Winfree.
While Mark continues listing off shows that are vastly overrated and on a pretty terrible network.
Band of Brothers.
And again, Ray Winston...
Not necessarily the news.
Does a solid enough job. Again, there's structural issues with that movie more so than the actor does a bad job.
Sex in the City.
Here we just have the best marriage of actor, role, and vision for the character. Again, hiccups in execution, sure, but this is a very complete vision of Frank Castle.
Game of Thrones.
Ray Stevenson, by the way. Ray
Stevenson.
Yep.
My apologies.
I got
Ray Winston is someone different. And you just get the best take on the character. Memery aside from Pat, who's now hacked Mark's brain.
All right. With that said...
Oh, hang on. No. Because I had...
Mark is about this close to falling asleep.
I'll be brief. Because one of the things that we didn't really get a chance to expound on a whole lot, but is, I think, the crux of what makes this season as good as it is in places, is the action set pieces such as they are. I got a personal kick out of Frank Castle walking into a gym full of actual fighters and beating the crap out of them because, I mean, look, it's nice to see Keith Jardine still getting work. I have a soft spot for the guy. What do you want me to say? He was an underappreciated fighter when I was coming into my deeper understanding of MMA generally, and put on some fights that I still enjoy from time to time. I love the way he beat the crap out of Chuck Liddell. So I've got a soft spot for Keith Jardine, so seeing him and Vladimir Kozlov still getting work somewhere in the world, it warms the cockles of my mostly dead heart. Seeing Frank bash his skull in with a 2.5-pound weight wrapped around his fist. I love that whole... I showed that to one of my brothers who's a bit of a, I won't say gym rat, but he's hitting the gym a lot recently, and enough so that now when I say it's February, watch out for people doing curls in the squat rack, he just goes, oh, I hate them. Because seriously, if you do curls in the squat rack, you are the worst kind of person. So that being just, okay, the appropriate response when you see someone, the appropriate gym sequence to seeing someone do curls in the squat rack is that fight scene. I love the way that one was set up and executed. I liked the brief car chase we got set to, I believe it was Marilyn Manson's song, kind of near the end when John Pilgrim chases them down in the cop car. And again, both of the action scenes between Frank and John and Pilgrim are really, really good. And there was one other. I like the robbery, the check cashing place that Billy robs, and then the homage to Heat the homage to that very, very. I mean, look, maybe there are a handful of genuinely great bank robberies, especially modern bank robberies in film. The one that goes wrong in the movie Heat, that features the running shootout down the block, is maybe the best ever. I mean, the Joker's introduction and The Dark Knight being a very, very close second in my estimation. Billy going a little bit ham with the with the double drum roll magazine was pretty darn great. I was a little bit disappointed actually in the scene from The Dark Hearts of Men when Frank kills a bunch of people. I mean, I don't know, it didn't quite flow the way I wanted it to, but we get a bit of that. The brutality and the action in this series, in this season specifically, is kind of what saves some of the weaker elements in a lot of respects. Because while there's this horrible, drawn-out sequence of Billy whining at Dr. Ladyface for the third time, and Amy I'm sitting here making spaghetti, and Curtis going, why, oh, why did I answer this man's phone call again? It does lead into, Curtis having a bit of a sniping excursion and then shooting that poor guy in the femoral artery and having to deal with the consequences of him bleeding out on him and just watching him deal with that. And when this season is good, it is really good. And that's actually just that, which of course just serves to make all the crappy stuff seem even worse by comparison, because there's genuine greatness here, but there's so much crap you have to slog through this season to get to it.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I didn't think for the amount of slog that we had to go through, there was enough there to really make it exciting. But we'll see what happens.
There's stuff from this season I will go back and rewatch, but I will not rewatch the whole season. I mean, I'll rewatch season 1 of Punisher. If at any point I tend to feel like you know what, this seems like a good idea, and I'll rewatch that. This season, if I want to rewatch it, I know where I'm trimming. I know where I'm hitting the fast forward button. Like, oh hey, skip ahead 5 minutes, and I can cut out all this pointless stuff. That basically just rehashes what happened 2 episodes ago, which was a rehash of an episode previous to that. But when this season is great, it's really, really great. It just never quite finds cohesion, which is kind of sad. And I'm very, very sad that this is probably it for Bernthal's take on the Punisher. On the plus side, I will never again have to deal with Madani. And you know what? In the crap storm that is in the storm of sadness that is losing this version of the character, and I am genuinely sad about it, my silver lining is no more Madani. Thank God.
Okay. Well, that brings our discussion of Punisher Season 2 to a close. I want to thank Jesse and Robert for joining me tonight. I am beat to shit. Tomorrow, myself and Jesse will continue to make more jokes about racist Bugs Bunny cartoons. No,
just call me Adam. Very specific Bugs Bunny cartoon reference right there.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what we watched that last night. Jesse just...
Look, let me be clear. I watched that Bugs Bunny cartoon as a kid, didn't understand that it was racist.
It's not.
I agree with that general premise. It's
ahead of his time.
I just
That's
laughed at it.
So
I thought it was funny.
It's
It's
is.
just Bugs Bunny. It's just Bugs Bunny doing Bugs Bunny things.
Right. So, we'll be reviewing Beast in Black from From Hell with Love tomorrow night on the Metal Hammer of Doom. There was no Metal Hammer of Doom last week. I needed to watch Pan's Labyrinth, and frankly, the new Bring Me the Horizon was just not our thing, so it wasn't really worth reviewing. Next week,
Mark, you made the correct choice. Pan's Labyrinth is a genuinely great and beautiful movie.
Next week, Alexis Hana and I joined up with Jesse. We discussed DC Looney Tunes 2. Myself, Alexis Hana, and this man over here, Robert Winfree, will be reviewing Alita Battle Angel on Damn You Hollywood. On the 20th, we welcome you back to Avantasia. And then on the 21st, Andrew Graham and his lovely wife will be joining me for a TV party discussing The Crown Season 2. Robert, you have like 1 minute to do plugs, and Jesse, then we're done.
Oh, wait, so I can obfuscate Jesse's entire plugs by taking up the full 60 seconds?
Just, you now have 50
You,
seconds.
Robert Winfree.
You have 50 seconds.
All right. There will be no 411 Ground and Pound radio show this coming Sunday because there's a UFC event on Sunday. It is UFC on ESPN 1. Pretty darn good card, actually. Cain Velasquez is set to make his return, where he will look like a killer and then injure his Glavin and be out for another 18 months, because that's what Cain does. He's fighting Francis Ngannou, who has terrifying power, but struggles to put everything together. So there is a preview of that, and a preview of Fight Night 145, which is in theory completely listed, but given that there's still 2 weeks out, I expect everything about it to change by the time we actually get to the event. So this previous edition of the Sunday on the 411 Ground and Pound radio show, Jeff Harris and I finally got back together. Jeff and I had scheduling issues over the last couple of weeks. We review UFC 234, which lost the main event literally about 2 hours before the show started. Really sucked. And a preview of, again, those 2 episodes. We talk a little bit about the news of the week. Light news week, not a whole lot to talk about, but you can tune in for our review of Israel Adesanya and Anderson Silva, our preview of Cain versus Francis, and again, really that ESPN card is darn good. You also have James Vick and Paul Felder, Jimmy Rivera and John Dodson. It's a really solid card. Quite frankly, it's demonstrably better than the pay-per-view they just put on. And we preview, again, the fight card for a couple of weeks out. Mark and I will be reviewing Alita next week.
Yep. I forgot to mention myself and Pat will be reviewing, we're doing live commentary for boxing on Fox, Leo Santa Cruz versus Miguel Flores.
Kind of a shame you guys couldn't get together for the one, because there was a heck of a fight between Beltran and Okada from the boxing event Saturday. Wasn't even the main event. Main event was pretty solid too. So Mark and I will review Alita, where I will yell about the horrible, horrible mashup that is the stylized take on filmmaking of Robert Rodriguez and the propensity for big budget CGI event movie that is James Cameron's Existence. In fairness, haven't yet seen the movie. So my perspective might be changed by the actual film, but considering I'm 90% sure they're just going to kill off Christoph Waltz in the first 30 minutes, and Christoph Waltz is my entire motivation for seeing that movie, I'm not holding out a whole lot of hope. Then, again, the 411 Ground and Pound show will be back on the 4th, excuse me. We'll be back on the 24th, and you can also find me Fridays. I've been covering Impact Wrestling in the Wrestling Zone of 411 Mania. Because Larry Zonka is out of commission, and while he is recovering, many hands are trying... Look, Larry did the work of about 18 guys, and God bless him for it. Now we just have about 18 other of us trying to make up for his one workload. So my contribution is I cover Impact Wrestling on Fridays, and no one reads or no one cares, because frankly I'm not that good at it. So if you want to have a laugh, you can tune in for my coverage of that, again, Fridays in the Wrestling Zone, and then this coming Sunday, as well as the Saturday after that, I will have coverage of the UFC events in the MMA Zone of 411 Mania. In a couple of months, Mark and I are going to be reviewing One Punch Man, which should be kind of fun.
Oh, yeah.
Mark's not a big fan of the anime, so I found one that I think will appeal to him. I'm going to lead. I've decided I'm going to try and slowly destroy Mark's soul with various anime shows, because I think I know exactly how to do it. It starts innocuously. It starts with One Punch Man, which is just kind of fun and funny and great satire. And then I'm just going to slowly conclude with a show, and I'm not sure which one, but I absolutely know at least 3 that are just very well done, very well executed shows, but destroy part of your soul along the way. And I'm not sure the exact journey yet, but that's going to be my goal. I'm going to drive Mark towards suicidality with anime.
No, Mark Radulich.
I mean, just threatening that seems to have caused Mark to spontaneously watch.
I thought he fell over there earlier. I heard a big thump. All right. Winfree, you done?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I am. Jesse, you have things to plug as well.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, go give the Radulich in Broadcasting Network Facebook page a like to stay up on top of all the great podcasts that we have to offer. All sorts of great content drops there. I think Mark may have mentioned it, but hey, if you can't if this didn't fix your Punisher craving, how's that? Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. Check out that source material we did where we talked about the Slavers arc from the Punisher Max Volume 5 on source material. I don't know if it's the last one, because I think I'm pretty certain there's more issues after that.
No, that went on for a while after that. And make sure you listen to the gag reel where once again I talked about robot prostitution.
Yeah,
guys,
gag reel.
No. That's not a gag. That's going to be your reality in 10 years.
Oh, there was a discussion. Trust you me. I don't know how the hell it ends up on Punisher Max Volume 5, but yes, robots and sexual favors by Alexa were all discussed right there on the source material podcast.
Because at the end, I'm pretty sure at the end of Punisher Max, Frank dies.
I asked Benjamin J. Colon. I said, "You got to tell me which," because he was kind of upset we didn't have the opportunity to have him on for the Slavers. And I asked him, I said, "Well, which one would you like to talk about?" And he said the final arc was pretty good. So that's probably what you're talking about there, Winfree. But yeah, it wasn't the final one. The Slavers was pretty good, though. It is a classic Punisher story. So check that out. But other than that, for the falling asleep Mark Radulich, for the ever knowledgeable Robert Winfree, I'm Jesse Starcher. Mark Radulich, sign us off of here, buddy.
All right. Thank you for joining us for TV Party tonight for Punisher Season 2, and we look forward to offending you in the future.
Hit that music.
I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans, America's premier home purchase lender. We've created a new way to protect you from unpredictable interest rates. Our exclusive Rate Shield approval. First, we lock your interest rate for up to 90 days. Then, if rates go up, your rate stays locked. But if rates go down, your rate drops. Either way, you win. Call us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com.
Rate Shield approval only valid on certain 30-year fixed-rate loans. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030. Additional conditions or exclusions may apply.
This Valentine's Day,
I could hear men's thoughts. Amazing!
critics are calling What Men Want ridiculously funny.
If you only knew what I was thinking right now.
Trust me, we don't want to know.
Taraji P. Henson, Tracy Morgan, What Men Want. Rated R. Now playing.